Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lambert, and I've been a parishioner here at Assumption for 20 years. I baptized and confirmed both of my children here, and I'm now pleased to serve on both the Pastoral Council and the Finance Council. In the last couple of weeks, I know you've heard from other parishioners about what being a steward of Assumption means to them. And I hope their talks have inspired your engagement and stewardship with Assumption. It is, after all, our collective spiritual home. Today, I'm here to share the numbers with you, both so that you understand Assumption's finances, and also to provide you with one more data point as you consider what stewardship will look like for you. So beginning next weekend, a stewardship report will also be available for you to read. In addition to the numbers I'm going to share tonight, it will include Assumption's income statement for the last 2 years and our budget for this fiscal year. But before we discuss numbers, I wanted to share with you what an eye-opening experience being on Assumption's Finance Council has been. It turns out I misunderstood a lot about parish finances. So in the event that I'm not the only one who misunderstood Assumption's finances, we're going to do a little bit of myth-busting this evening, if you'll bear with me. So myth one. I had always assumed that the big mother church, an entity I never really defined for myself, showered money on all of the parishes whenever they needed it. The truth is quite the opposite. The only money our parish has is given to it by you in the form of regular collections, donations, and bequests. It is your stewardship and your stewardship alone that has sustained Assumption by ensuring that the staff can be paid, that the priests can be fed, that the spaces are kept clean and safe, and the lights have stayed on. There are no payments that come from the larger church to Assumption. Myth two, it seems like there's 100 oratorians and staff working full-time on Assumption's affairs, doesn't it? Not true. We have exactly one full-time pastor, Father Michael, who works 1 million hours a day, saying Mass, hearing confessions, baptizing babies, marrying couples, ministering to the sick, tracking expenses, managing construction projects, negotiating our insurance coverage, and so forth. And yet this summer, when my family was in crisis and needed him, he found the time to talk to me and to support my family. And I'm guessing I'm not the only parishioner for whom Father Michael has dropped everything to support, in addition to everything else he does. In addition to Father Michael, we have 2 part-time people on staff who help run things behind the scenes with him. We also have part-time folks in our religious education and music ministries, and of course, maintenance and cleaning. But that's it. There's no cast of thousands. Myth number 3, there are dozens, if not hundreds of volunteers helping out where we are thinly staffed, picking up the slack. If only. There are actually about 24 volunteers, and many of them wear multiple hats here. So again, there's no cast of thousands or even hundreds, but imagine what we could do if there were. So that's probably enough with my myth busting. I think you get the idea. We are responsible for Assumption's well-being. So let's talk about the numbers, specifically regular operating revenue and expenses. As you know, we also have a very large renovation project underway, and a detailed description of it will be included in the stewardship report, which I referenced earlier, which will be available next weekend. So today, we'll just stick to regular revenue and expenses. Total revenue in fiscal year 2021 was $355,000 versus fiscal year 2020 when it was $562,000. Fiscal year 2020 was extremely high because we had a large and unexpected bequest of $152,000. But if you even remove that large request, fiscal year 2020 was still about $54,000 higher than 2021, and we're still running below where we were pre-pandemic. We've budgeted for revenue of $323,000 in fiscal year 2022. That's lower still because we had a couple of extraordinary items in revenue last year, which we don't expect to repeat this year. So to get back to my earlier point quickly about where does that revenue come from, I'll break it down. In fiscal year 2021, about 78% of our revenue came from collections, donations, and bequests. After that, it's smaller receipts for things like fees for religious education, interest and dividends on our investments, a diocesan grant to pay for our youth minister, leftover receipts from diocesan campaigns in prior years, and so forth. And fiscal year 2022 looks very similar, with 79% of our budgeted revenue coming from collections, donations, and bequests. There's no big cash gift coming from the diocese or Rome. It's just you and me taking care of our church. With regard to expenses, we've taken serious cuts to help us navigate this pandemic. Salaries and benefits, which were about 40% of our expenses, were cut significantly in 2020 and have stayed low for the past 3 years, including this year's fiscal year budget. Utilities have stayed mostly flat, with some savings in budgeted fiscal year 2022 as a result of efficiencies in our renovation project, because of our renovation project. Two expenses which we don't control, which continue to climb, are our insurance costs and our diocesan assessment. Together, they represent 39% of our fiscal year 2022 budget. With all of that, our regular expenses were $342,000 in fiscal year 2021 versus $383,000 in fiscal year 2020. We budgeted for increased expenses in 2022, driven primarily, again, by those insurance costs and that diocesan assessment. The net ordinary income that results for fiscal year 2021 was a positive $13,000, but with lower budgeted revenue and higher expenses, fiscal year 2022's forecasted net income is a deficit of $54,000. So now that you know a little more about our finances, I ask that you consider what it means to you to have a spiritual home here at Assumption. And I ask you to imagine what Assumption could be if we were all active stewards. If every one of us consistently gave even the smallest amount, we could ensure that our spiritual home could grow and thrive for the next generation and the generation after that. So as we enter the season of Advent, we have so much to be thankful for. Our parish has provided us with a spiritual home through this pandemic and for generations. It's time for us to come home to Assumption and invest in our future. Thank you very much for your time.